Okay, so today's session, I think CSA will come in to set the context and set the stage, and then I'll hand over the presentation to Saju, who will walk through a little bit more about actually how can organizations build trust with their businesses through cybersecurity measures put in place. And finally, Daniel will talk through his own experience. So let me just set the stage by saying that today's session is about building trust. So I think when we look at trust, we are not the only ones looking at it. And the World Economic Forum also has something about digital trust. In their words, they say that digital trust is a necessity in a global economy that's reliant on connectivity, data use, and new technologies. Now, this is a big word. Trust is a big word and a big concept. But one of the things that is very critical in order to be trustworthy is really about how we use technology in a secure manner and as well as in a responsible manner as well. So I think today the discussions will go quite a bit more into the cybersecurity aspects of it. And that's why I thought this is a good slide to set the stage for the discussion. Now, if I looked at how Singapore has fared the past, I would say 18 months or the last 2 years in the pandemic, we would see that actually businesses actually have digitalized rapidly. In a way, I think many of this has also been forced by the global pandemic, that the physical and brick and mortar presence have been limited, and that's why all of us are forced to go online. So I think this is just a study that we have pulled out that was done by Cisco. Essentially, they looked at Asia Pacific, and actually Singapore is doing not too badly. 88% of our SMEs do have a digitalization roadmap, and 60% are actually halfway along their digitalization journey, which is actually good. However, as we digitalize, I think it increases also the level of interconnectedness within the systems and across systems and organizational boundaries as well. So what happens is that increased digitalization inevitably creates new opportunities and also introduces new cyber risks that we need to know about and need to be aware about. The attack surfaces increase, and this is why we have seen quite a major increase in the ransomware phenomena. And the slides would show that we have seen about a 13% increase. In terms of supply chain, that has also become another big area of increase as well. And I'll talk a little bit about supply chain later on, but essentially take note that it can be responsible for up to 62% of the 60 system intrusion incidents. And most importantly, it's actually also the human factor, because when we think about cybersecurity, we always think about the hardware, but sometimes we forget that as humans, we also play a role in cybersecurity. And actually, 82% of the breaches do involve the human element. So I think earlier on, I mentioned supply chain attacks. So let me just elaborate a little bit further about the supply chain attack. So this is an attack that is not happening to you directly, but indirectly because of a vulnerability or exploit in your supply chain partners, which can be your vendors or your providers that provide you with specific service. And this is becoming very scalable in the cybersecurity industry, because if attackers target a supply chain provider that happens to have a very large install base or many customers that he's serving, in a way, it can help them to scale their attacks much further along. And this is why one of the reasons why we've also seen supply chain attacks on the rise. Well, on the buyer side, what do you need to think about? On the buyer side, as you buy services, as well as from third-party providers, you would want to ask yourself, how cyber safe is your suppliers? And actually, would you be inevitably or be compromised as a result of a vulnerability in a supplier? Now, on the other hand, if you are a provider of a service, or if you are a software provider, solutions provider, you will also find that your customers are a bit more aware now, and they may start asking you, how cyber safe are you, so that I can trust you and you're not going to be the cause of an attack on my business. So since the topic about trust, we thought it's important to mention that actually we have seen some studies that indicate that trustworthiness and cybersecurity posture does influence buying decisions. And this is why trust is important. How can you build trust for your business? I think one way is through a cybersecurity certification, and this will demonstrate that this is a very visible label that you have put in place good cybersecurity measures. Now, in a typical world, in the absence of something like this, you may invest in cybersecurity, but cybersecurity very much happens in the back end, and people don't really know and see, and they can't really see it. So I think by putting out a certification program, it helps organizations have a visible indicator that they have put in place good measures in place. This helps to build trust with their customers, because the customers no longer need to worry that, oh, I'm going to be attacked as a result of a third-party exploit, for example. And this in turn then helps companies take on a competitive edge through good cybersecurity measures. So let me just briefly mention that there are two marks. One is the Cyber Essentials mark and one is the Cyber Trust mark. The way we designed Cyber Essentials mark is targeted at smaller organizations that may be not so digital, but they're just starting in their cybersecurity journey. So the whole philosophy is not to go into 100% security, because 100% security can be very expensive for the small business. So what we have done is to focus on basic baseline cyber hygiene that helps businesses to stay protected against the majority of the common cyber attacks. And we do this by prioritizing what organizations should put in place first. So there are 5 categories here. One big category is around the company's assets. One big category is around security and protecting these assets. Another is about updating the software. The fourth is on making judicious backups and storing them offline. And finally, the last is in the area of incident response. And this is a formal certification program. We have appointed certification bodies, one of which ISOCert is here today to share a little bit more. But essentially, this is a certificate that's valid for 2 years with an independent assessor basically being sent by the certification body to do desktop assessment. These are some of the examples of the measures that elaborate a little bit further, and I talked about it earlier on. Saju later on will walk through a bit more details, so I wouldn't go through this slide, but have him to walk through the details in the next section. So earlier on, I said that Cyber Essentials is actually designed for smaller organizations, and these are some examples of customers who have actually been certified, and this is how they're seeing value from it. So one example over here is a company that is an aerospace company, and they are in the space of providing executive charter, aeromedical evaluation, and special cargo, and so on. So because of the nature of their business, security is actually an area of concern because they actually have high net worth clients, and also because of the work that they do, they also have contact with personal or medical data, all of which is sensitive. So for them, they have observed that their clients have been quite concerned about cybersecurity. So I think in going for the certification, they have been able to demonstrate that they have some baseline cyber hygiene put in place, and it helps them to build trust with their clients. Another example here, I won't elaborate further because we actually have them here today. This is Lushn Health. I'll let Daniel talk about it in the next segment later on. So I briefly covered Cyber Essentials, which is baseline cyber hygiene for small organizations. For organizations that have gone beyond cyber hygiene, actually, there's also the Cyber Trust mark. And this is a mark of distinction for companies that have more extensive digitalization. So we take on a risk-based approach simply because actually in the philosophy of cybersecurity, I think the whole industry is moving away from a compliance-based regime, but into a risk-based regime. And what a risk-based regime means is that firstly, you need to understand your own cybersecurity risk posture, what your exposure is, what your risk appetite is, and then from there put in place the appropriate measures that would make sense for your organization. And therefore, what we have designed is 5 different tiers in Cyber Trust mark, from supporter all the way to advocate tier, with a different number of domains that are associated with all these different tiers. So this helps to guide companies in knowing what would be needed for them to actually stay protected in their line of business. And this is also a certification program that's formally launched. It's valid for 3 years. And there's also a certification body that will be assigned. But in this case, the assessment is a bit more rigorous and involves 2 stages. One part is on documentation. The other part is on implementation and the effectiveness. Now, I think the first step in anything is actually taking stock of your organization, where your cybersecurity risk posture is. And even if you're not ready for certification, a very good way is for you to do a check on yourself, a self-assessment to see where you are in terms of your posture. So for both Cyber Essentials and Cyber Trust, we have put all the relevant documents online. So the standards are available online for you to refer to. And there's also a accompanying spreadsheet for you to do self-assessment. So as you walk through the self-assessment, it generates a report that looks something like this for you to get a sense of where you are in terms of your cybersecurity journey. What are some areas that maybe you need to pay a bit more attention to? And this will be a good start for you to get started in basically building that trust journey with your customers. So I think in summary, a few easy steps. Step 1, perform a self-assessment. All details are available online. And if you feel that you're ready for certification, you would want to prepare the relevant supporting documents to support you in this, so that you can then move on to appoint your certification body, who will then do the independent assessment to verify that you have actually done and met all this. And with that, I've come to the end of my presentation. It is also a very timely juncture for me to pass the presentation on to ISOCert, who is one of our appointed certification body, and they will talk you through a bit more of that process. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Veronica. So let me share my screen. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So I think without further ado, I proceed because we have only 20 minutes left for me. So I will go through quickly on the requirements on Cyber Essentials. Okay, before starting, I just want to give some background information about, or some introduction about ISOCert. So we are established in 2016 as a certification body accredited by SAC, or Singapore Accreditation Council. And in 2018, we are appointed by IMDA to carry out data protection trust mark. And eventually in 2021, we are appointed by CSA, in early 2022, appointed by CSA to certify organization with Cyber Essential mark and Cyber Trust mark. Okay. And these are some accreditation marks. I quickly go through. These are some of the clients we have certified so far. And this is some background about myself. Later, we will share the slides if you guys need it. And I'll quickly go to the program and the topic for today. So as Veronica was mentioning earlier, CSA CyberSafe program is actually to recognize or to help organization to instill some kind of good cyber hygiene or cybersecurity practices. So we have classified, we have categorized two separate programs. One is Cyber Essential Mark, another one is Cyber Trust Mark. Like Veronica rightly pointed out, Cyber Trust Mark is a bit more rigorous and more detailed, which is needed for some cyber security or IT security maturity you need in order to embark on Cyber Trust Mark. So Cyber Essential Mark is actually for fairly smaller organizations. Smaller doesn't mean that the size, or newer organization means the organization is still haven't establish anything in terms of cybersecurity posture. In Singapore, we have around close to 350,000 of SMEs. Probably Singapore is the only one country in the world there is even a single man, one-man show is considered as a small medium enterprises. Some other countries, 50 employees and stuff, they classified as small and medium enterprises. For Singapore, we have even one employee, we classified as small medium enterprises. So we are micro and organizations, we classify as small medium enterprises. So such organizations, they can be established in Singapore for maybe 10 years, 20 years, but they haven't done anything on cybersecurity or to put in some effort to secure their IT practices. Cyber Essential Mark will be the first essential stepping stone for them. So Essential Mark is built or designed in a way that you don't need to have any additional effort. What you have, plus extra effort from the cybersecurity agencies, the checklist, you can put in place some addition. So you can make your basement strong. So that is the main idea of having a Cyber Essential program. So these are the two programs, Cyber Essential and Trustmark. Trustmark actually got 5 tiers. I will not go into detail on Trustmark later. We will fully focus on Cyber Essential Mark today. So Trustmark have a supporter, practitioner, promoter, performer, and advocate level. So after Essential, you are ready to go for Cyber Trust. You can look into your checklist again, and then maybe you can qualify yourself for 1, 2, 3, or whichever tier you want to, and then we can actually certify you accordingly and issue a certificate based on that. ISOCert actually recently was, during cybersecurity peak, we are one of the top achiever for Cyber Trust Mark certification. We have close to 7 or 8 companies certified with Cyber Trust Mark as of today. Okay, let me give some introduction about Essential Mark. So as I mentioned earlier, Essential Mark is targeted to organizations with limited IT or cybersecurity expertise. Like you don't have any dedicated IT person, you do not have a lot of sophisticated IT systems in place, but of course, the hacking can happen to anyone. Cyber attackers can attack anyone in Singapore, anyone. So you also can be one of the victims. So that doesn't mean that you are a very small business, you're not doing much things. That doesn't mean that you will not be attacked by this kind of people. So what we can do is we have to be prepared. Like how you're buying an insurance for your car or buying an medical insurance or health insurance. We know that we won't fall sick now, but we will still buy an insurance just in case. Same thing. So the Essential Mark is actually just giving you some advantage or some leverage When anything happened to you, you know there are some things are there put in place. Some backup plans are there, some response system is there. I will go into those details later on. So the key objective of the Cyber Essential Mark is to enable organizations. The Smart Nation movement, in order for the Singapore to achieve the Smart Nation growth into entirely 100%, we have to look into the small organizations or the organization with little or very small, minimal cybersecurity hygiene. So Cyber Essential Mark is focusing on those organizations. Please come and approach some, come and adopt the Cyber Essential Mark and look into the checklist and see where you are standing. It's certification, going for certifications later part. At least go through the checklist, understand where are we standing. So what are the things are missing. Based on that, you can put in place the controls. Then later, once everything is ready, you can go for certification. So the Essential Mark is actually giving you, or the CSA's checklist is giving you this platform for you to gauge where are we standing. Based on the industry best practice or based on the national best practice or whatever things, where are we standing? You can have a self-assessment. So that is the main intention of having this self-assessment form available at CSA's website. Later I'll share the link. You can free to download it and check it yourself. So there are some additional resources you may need. Like not necessary that whatever you have, you are ready to go for Essential Mark. There are some resources you need to put in place, some additional things you may need to spend, some resources you need to spend, some products you need to buy if there is any. Because you are totally zero, you need to make sure that you want to protect it. Of course, there are certain things you need to establish and implement. So simplify the implementation journey for organizations. Cyber Essential Mark help to prioritize what is essential for your organization. So first of all, our focus is in Cyber Essential Mark is focus on what you have or your asset. So based on your asset, your risk profile is generated. So if you have one critical system, our focus is this critical system is vulnerable to the environment, in the internet, then you just focus on that because our main intention is to protect that particular application. So what are the things? So that is going to be your asset. So that asset you focus, and based on that asset, what are the controls you need to put in place? You can put in place. So that is the main intention of having a Cyber Essential Mark. So the Cyber Essential Mark also serves as a badge to recognize organization. We Singaporeans, we like to have some certificates or some recognitions or posted on LinkedIn, posted in Facebook, social media platform, in marketing materials. Yes. So Cyber Essential Marks will give you a certificate of achievement or certificate of recognition for you to demonstrate to your peers that yes, we have these controls in place and we are certified by a second, third party auditor to come and give you, and CSA have some blessings on me, and this is what I have achieved. So there's a certification is for Cyber Essential Mark. Like as I mentioned earlier, the Cyber Essential Mark, if you look into closely the checklist, there are actually 5 categories. Veronica briefly mentioned this one earlier as well. So we focus on assets, security and protection of the assets, updating, backup, and respond. So if there is no assets, or your B, C, D, E actually no need to bother. So it's all depend on your assets. So what you have, based on that, you need to put in place the rest of the controls. So assets are people, your people are one of your assets. Hardware and software are your assets, your data. The data can be your business data, your confidential data, whatever data you have, your personal data of your employees, personal data of your customers, your other finance data, accounts data, whichever data you have. So these are the 3 assets you need to look into. So when you look into assets, you need to consider people are my assets. So what I need to do for my people? People are your employees. Hardware and software. I have hardware, I have software. What I need to do? I have data. So if there is no assets, then no need to talk about B, C, D, and E. But B, of course, if you have asset, how are you going to protect it? There are certain controls there to protect it. They can be physical security, they can be administrative security, they have a technological security. So there are certain 3 different tiers of security measures are there. And there is updates. Of course, when there are softwares, you need to make sure it is updated. It's very simple, layman understand. Backup, of course, you have something, you need to have a backup. You need to have a backup for the backup as well sometimes. So the backup is additional insurance you are buying. Then the last thing is respond. If anything happens, how are you going to respond? When there is a data breach happen, how are you going to respond? What are you supposed to do? Who you need to trigger first? Who you need to notify first? Any government agency you need to notify? Do you need to notify your customers? Is there any contractual obligation you need to fulfill? We need to identify all these things. So the Cyber Essential Marks in a nutshell is not just protecting your data, it's actually just making sure that you are meeting certain regulatory requirements as well. In terms of PDPA, for example, if you have a personal data, your data, you need to consider that one of your asset. of course, you need to have a data breach management plan. When you have a CSA reporting, you need to make sure that you're reporting to CSA, or you are a third-party service provider for a critical information infrastructure. Are you reporting to these people? You need to report to they need to report to CSA, so you need to make sure that there are certain controls you put in place. So these are the things Cyber Essential Mark will make sure that what are the gray areas will identify, make it more clear for you. So these are the 9 critical the assessment points of Cyber Essential Marks in the checklist, which is people, hardware and software, data, virus and malware protection, access control, secure configuration, software update, backup of essential data, so incident response. This is similar. The 3 things are there. Total 9 control, 9 subcategories are there. It's actually derived from the 5 major assets: security and protection, update, backup, and respond. Okay. So in the assets, the people, of course, in any organization, people are one of the key assets for organizations. Without people, we can have policies, we can have procedures, we can have processes, but without our people doing it, people knowing what to do, there's no point having all these things. So people are one of the key asset for organization, or employees are key assets for organization. So how the employees will be aware of all these things? Of course, obviously, you have to do training for them. You have to train them. You have to give them some kind of training. You have to tell them what are the processes we need to do. We need to educate them. We need to get a participation and consultation from these people to understand what they're supposed to do. So that these assets under people, we are actually covering a total entire holistic training process for the people in your organization, the employees of the organizations. So when tomorrow there is something happen, they should know what to report. They should know who to report. They should know when to report. They know something happened, they just keep quiet, no point. So we need to know that the training, people need to be aware of. The bosses need to make sure that they want to have a cyber hygiene practice in place. The employees need to follow the same. So we need to provide them training. We need to make sure that they are updated on all these things. So that is the first thing. It's quite simple, straightforward. Okay. Second, of course, our hardware and software. The hardware can be anything: your laptops, your router, your firewall, your servers. It can be including your cloud storage and cloud backups and cloud solutions and whatever things you have. AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, whatever, your emails, everything is going to be your assets. So that is in your hardware. It can be some in software, like some applications you have. You have some kind of HRMS software you have hosted in some third-party applications. Those applications, your Microsoft applications, your Windows. Make sure your Windows is updated. There is no, other than legacy systems, shouldn't be anything running on Windows XP or Windows 7. All the latest application has to be updated. Windows 7 is now end of life, so there won't be any security updates. So you need to make sure that the softwares are updated and there are security updates are keep happening. Everything is updated to the latest version. Windows updates are regularly happening. All those things. So this is quite straightforward. I have picked the key important things. Sometimes based on our experience, we have certified close to 10 or around 8 companies for Cyber Essential Mark. So based on that, how many the challenges the organization face, I just picked those key things. So training is one of the things which is missing from some of some early adopters. The organization does not adopt anything yet, but they are struggling with trainings first because they didn't have that culture in the organization. So they need to have that culture. The second thing is assetting. You need to have an inventory of what they have. They are the hardware, the software. They need to have an inventory with the serial number, the product number, the warranty, manufacturer, so that tomorrow anything happens, they know who to call, they know what to do. So that's identifying all those key informations. Third is data. This is quite tricky. Okay, this can be very tricky, even though just the 1 4-letter word, data, it can be very tricky. What data? Data can be anything. Your customer data, it can be your personal data, it can be your business data, accounts, financial data, whichever data. So depend on organization. So Essential Mark is actually going with scoping. So you can decide, okay, I'm focusing on my customer data, you focus on the customer data. Then you need to identify, this is quite similar to the previous one, the hardware and software, because the data either residing in a hardware like a server or in a software like a cloud storage or whatever applications you have. So it can be still referred to the hardware and software, but it's data, the backup and all those things will come in. And of course, when you have data, you need to make sure your data is disposed after the retention period is over. and there must be some kind of annual review of your data inventory and all those things. This data inventory is nothing similar to your asset inventory. The asset inventory, your hardware list and software list. This data inventory can be a separate list, which you identify in the server ABC. I have customer data and my employee data. So you need to identify, you need to tabulate, you need to make sure that where are these data is located. Because tomorrow, when your IT person come and tell you that, hey, boss, this server has been hacked. So you should identify immediately in this particular server, what are the data residing on. So we can act accordingly. If there is a personal data, of course, you need to notify PDPC. If there is a customer data, which is under a critical information, of course, you need to notify them. So there is a lot of things will come in. So this is to identifying what is your preparing for you the last stage, the final stage, which we don't want you to go through, which is responding to an incident. Okay. Yeah, the next one is access control. The access control can be different. It can be technological access control. I mean, we can put in place some kind of external parties to come and access. What we can do is our end user PCs like laptops, our servers, firewall, etc., can be protected by using a anti-malware or malwares and all antivirus and all those things. Simple antivirus protections and all those things for end user PC. This is coming from external. There can be access controls happening from internally the organization data. Like for example, you have a HR person, you have an operational staff, you have a salesperson. You don't want the salesperson and operational person to go and access the accounts and finance data or HR data. Of course, there must be some access control inside. So you have a cloud, you have a server which have all the folders inside, and you need to make sure that access control is defined in the Active Directory level or in the access control level. It must be something. If you have a NAS, Synology, you have any NAS, you have a cloud storage or OneDrive or Google Drive or whatever things, make sure that there is an access control put in place. So we will check, like you say that there is a person, Saju, and there's another person is Veronica. Veronica can access everything. Saju can only access HR data. So we will check whether Saju have access to other documents or not. So this is what you're supposed to do. Sometimes IT people, what they do, they will just try to map with the admin account. So basically, even though it's not mapped to my PC, I should be able to access. So these are the things you need to make sure that you put in place. Okay. An administrator account shall be only accessed by the senior management or the person who is dedicated, and make sure that password is not a default password. A secure configuration, most of the time, some organization has some difficulties. So that's why I just give some key points like, what is the best practices. You can actually find out from secure configuration, like when you update, make sure that there is a security updates are there. When you go to a router or firewall and all those things, make sure that there is no security issues are being highlighted. That means if you have security issues, or even if you're hosting in a cPanel or Linux platform or in your hosting platform or web hosting platform, there shouldn't be anything which is actually missing. Like, for example, there is some security vulnerabilities are highlighted there, but you never act on it. Your PHP version is still very old version. You never updated it. So those are the things actually you need to make sure that shouldn't be there. Okay, those are the things we will look into the secure configuration part. Okay. And when you give a laptop to an employee, very simple things. So we will ask a simple question. Based on IT security policy, the employee shouldn't be installing any application in your laptop. But when you go and check, there's administrator right is given to the employee. He can install anything what he needs. So that shouldn't be a secure configuration in terms of this section A6. So these are the things you need to look into in detail. Okay, later Q&A session, if you have any clarification, you can post it. Again, coming back to the same thing, software updates. Please try to update the software. The latest patches must be updated. It can be performed manually or automatic. Leave it to you. We are not asking you to have the software or another application must purchase to make sure configure everything and centrally manage and all those things. No, you can, because smaller organization, essential mark is for smaller organization, which is easily manageable, like 10 employees, 20 employees. You can do it manually quite easily by one IT staff or one dedicated person, whoever it is. And make sure that critical systems, I cannot tell you what is critical system unless I understand what your organization is. So it's for you, you should know, the organization should know what is critical for me. For you, your financial data, you are an accounting firm. For you, maybe have an accounting platform, you have everything. That is your critical data. So how frequently you update it? What is the backup for that particular system? So that is the priority for you, not anything else. You're a human resource management system company. So you should know that your customers are accessing your human resource management system. So what kind of critical data we have inside and what to do to back up, what to do to protect this particular data. And the software updates has to be there. There shouldn't be any SSL vulnerabilities and other XSS vulnerability. All those things shouldn't be there. SQL injection vulnerability shouldn't be there. So those things should be updated. So it can be go into the software development cycle as well. So make sure that your patches, your software, the source code, everything has to be updated if there are any changes. Usually there is a JavaScript, there is a JSS updates, and all those things will happen. So make sure that these things are updated regularly to mitigate all those issues. And implementation of updates and patches. So we need to make sure that there are safer software versions are updated. We need to show some evidences. Of course, I won't be able to see everything, but at least we will sample some and ask you to send us some evidence of you have updated some of the user PCs with the latest versions and stuff. Okay. Backup. The name suggests backup anything which is needed or anything essential. Backup can be everything by right based on even the ISO requirements. Backup should have an offline backup as well. So you make sure that the critical systems have not only a cloud backup, there must be an offline backup, physical backup, like in a hardware, in a store, in a hard disk or in a tape or whatever things, you must have a backup as well. It's depend on your organization, and you can survive without a backup for 1 week. Okay, fine, no need to have a backup that particular, but is your business is that sensitive to the data? It's all depend on your organization and the climate of the organization, whether you really can live without the data for 1 week. So it depends on how fast you can retrieve the data back and all those things. Okay. So the backup can be performed by manually. Somebody copy the data on a daily basis or weekly basis into a hard disk and keeping it separately. Okay, the data is any point of time is accessible, restorable. Okay, fine. That means your backup is working. And you make sure that your backup is done. Doesn't mean that the backup has to be checked regularly. Make sure that the backup is accessible, is usable. Okay. If you're using a cloud service solutions, storing the backup in the hard disk and purchasing the backup service as a cloud provider, adopt multiple tiers. Because sometimes in the cloud, if the cloud is not available, it's very difficult for you to restore back the data. So what is your commitment level? So you need to make sure that you need to assess the criticality is based on you. You need to assess this one is okay or this one is okay. Wait for 1 hour. This one I can wait for 2-3 days. So you prioritize based on that, your backup. So you must have a backup plan for that. So we will look for backup plan. Incident response, which I was mentioning earlier. So whatever we are doing, we don't want you to end up going through this incident response. When incident response will happen, when some incident happen. So if incident happen means it can be bad. It could be, most of the cases, it could be very bad. So we don't want you to go through this incident response process. That is the reason the incident response is the last thing. But this is one of our main, whatever we are building along the way from A1 to A8 to avoid the response. So we don't want you to end up in this situation. So make sure that, but we have to be anticipated for all these things. So we have to make sure there is a proper response plan. Who need to be ready, who need to be responsible for. We need to identify like communication to responsible parties and regulatory agencies. As I mentioned earlier, cyber essential mark is not just meeting certain cyber security controls. It's actually meeting some regulatory requirements as well. Reporting to CSA, reporting to PDPC, reporting to police, or anything is there, or your customers, contractual requirements, we need to be fulfilled as well. So it will be inside your communication plan for your disaster recovery or response plan. Okay. Of course, the incident response plan has to be communicated to employees. This should be covered in your A1, the training for your employees. It has to be covered holistically. Okay. This is basically from A1 to A9. So basically the understanding, so the organization has to download the checklist from CSA's website. You need to fill up the checklist. You need to go through. You need to fill up the information, and later I go through the Excel document with you, so you can understand what are the things happening there. Based on that, there will be a risk profile identified in the checklist as well. Okay. So this audit is not done on site. That means we will not be coming down to your office. This Cyber Essential mark is done a desktop assessment, but you need to provide us all the evidences with the completed self-assessment A to G, plus additional information, whatever be necessary based on the scope of the organization. So we will ask you for additional information. It's not necessary that it will happen finish within 1 day. So we will review the report. We will ask you for some clarifications. You may respond the information to me maybe next week, tomorrow. Then the audit will conclude only after that. I have to make sure that you have implemented. Don't just give us some documents and this is my plan, but I want to see whether are you implementing it or not. Not just a plan will not give you as an essential mark. So you have to show some evidence that you have implemented it. Some actually instant response you can just show us a plan, but because nothing happens, so there is only a plan. It's fine. But certain things you have antivirus policy. I will have an antivirus policy, but I want to see where is an antivirus. Did you install, did you purchase, did you install on your laptops, did you install on the servers, access controls being implemented? So it's based on that we will assess. Okay. So there is a desktop assessment. So we will prepare the audit report and we will have independent review. That is our own process to do it. So we will decide, approve or reject or whatever things we will give you the decision. And certification is valid for 2 years. And you can go for recertification before the expiry, or you can even go for cyber trust mark before the expiry or along the way. Okay. So these are the things. Before that, let me share another one more, the checklist with you, so that those organizations having some difficulties. So basically, this is some informations they are asking you to fill up just step by step. This is a sample. They will tell you what are the things you pass or fail and stuff. This is an example. Then you just need to fill up this information here first, your data and your date of self-assessment, when you're doing and stuff, and the scope. The scope means what your organization exactly doing. Then your self-assessment, you have to fulfill whether what is actually there, your suggested artifacts and all those things are there. So everything is clearly defined. So you need to fill up. So there is a result will be given based on your things, and shall statement all has to be completed. Should actually recommendations you don't need to implement now, but it's actually you should do it later on, not necessary. So these are the 48 things are the one critical for you to fulfill. And finally, there is a declaration must be given. You have to read and agree, and you have to put a signature here and send back to the certification bodies. There are 6 or 7 certification body, including ISOCert. You can send to us once you engage us. Then we will review it with all the evidences and all the, not just a self-assessment form. There will be some policies, some screenshots of the evidences you need to send to us. After that, yes, we will assess and we will give you the certificate based on that. Okay, I think I overshot. I think I will pass to Daniel to go through his session now. Later, anything Q&A, we will take it separately later on. Okay.
Thanks, Saju. Hi, guys. So before I begin, I just want to say that there's a lot of the how that's given to you already by Veronica, by Saju. Very detailed and fantastic content right there. But maybe you're sitting over at the end of your phone thinking about what does it have to do with me, and then why should I go and do this? So consider this. Any of you actually receive a phone call, right? And you pick it up and suddenly it goes, this is Ministry of Health. You have one important message. Press 1 to receive. Okay? And then you press 1 and it goes to some Chinese speaking guy. This was me every single week for the past year. And some of you may be thinking that, oh, wow, this is so annoying. Okay, fine. Another group of you may be thinking, hey, this is not going to be me. Who will be so stupid to go and fall for this kind of things? Okay. Then there's another group of you that will be wondering, like, where did they get my number from? Like, did I leave my number somewhere, or who must have taken my number and then got it leaked? So that is the content of what I want to share today, and that's exactly what motivated me to get Cyber Essentials. So now I will share my screen. This is the answer. All these leaks you can see, right? On this one page. The statistics are from CSA themselves, so you can go and have a look. But if you can see, right down in the middle, you see 2019, 2020, 2021. the numbers are increasing when it comes to cyber crimes. And even in Singapore, last year, okay, 2021, cybercrime cases accounted for 48% of the total crime, you know. If I recall, in 2020, it was 43. So this is getting more real than ever. And if you want to know where your phone number got leaked, it's most likely from one of these incidences. Okay, and you can see on the bottom left, right, phishing. Okay, if they can't get into your computer, have you ever wondered why you keep receiving spam mails as an employee, right? Because the company has done their part to really protect and ring fence the digital infrastructure. So it's very challenging for them to penetrate on the company level. So what they do, they penetrate on the individual laptop, okay, level. And if you are unsuspecting or a little bit more careless, yeah, and then this is for you. This message is totally for you because you may be susceptible to phishing. And through my sharing, you will understand that we may not be as protected as we think we are. So going for this Cyber Essentials mark for Lushn Health, this TCM company that I'm running, it's not so much of a certification for the sake of certification. It's more so to understand what are the risks involved in the whole spectrum of things, especially in this digital era, and how can we do our part to mitigate these risks. Yeah, and this is not just for business owners, these are for professionals as well. If you or yourself have anyone that using social media platforms, okay, which is, you can see at the bottom left of this screen, take your screenshot here. Yeah, bottom left, right at the corner, you see number one commonly spoofed sector is social network. Yeah, so this is your WhatsApp, your Facebook, all this. So you have to listen to this. Okay, now moving forward. Okay, phishing, the blue segment, you see social media, number one, followed by financial and online cloud service. So doesn't mean that, excuse me, doesn't mean that what you get cannot be seen as coming from a legit source, a legitimate source. So in this, we can see recently, right, this OCBC scam or leak in Singapore, the messages that were received by the victims actually came from this sender that says OCBC. But if you are unsuspecting, right, if you are not careful, you will fall victim to this. So all these are taken from OCBC's website themselves. You can see they are both fake. Okay, so moving forward, how it translates to myself, my clinic. So this is my clinic. I will share with you a little bit more on how it translates into the real world, how it looks like. So from basically all the technical information about what you need to do, this is how it looks like. This is the physical location. Some of you may have or run offline store. This is my clinic right here. Aside from my physical security, like my door locks, like my computer having passwords, facial ID, all that, we want to consider a little bit more. Like, okay, are we lacking something? Because we do have very sensitive patient information stored under our patient management systems, our cloud devices. And the last thing we want is a leak, right? So even though we have all this physical security, we need to consider our digital infrastructure. And once we go through this cyber essentials, you will have definitely a bird's eye view. It's going to be slightly overwhelming at the start, but because CSA has a lot of toolkits, and I will share with you that because of these toolkits, it made things very simple, I must say, because you don't know where to start, right? You want to know that, okay, what do I need to do? And why do I need to do it? And after that, how can I go about doing it? So what happens is that CSA has taken pains to actually do up very nice toolkits online for employers as well as for your employees. So you can easily download for free and disseminate. Okay, so what this translates to, because my clients' data is very precious, not just to us and also to my clients, but in implementing the systems, I also need to consider how the employees and staff were taking the information. So because of these toolkits, right, all the pictures and all the diagrams and illustration, it made it very simple to disseminate to my staff. So one look, even though they are mostly Mandarin speaking, it was very easy to understand, right? And especially for the management who are dealing with these kind of accounts and passwords, even more important, they need to know. Okay, and one more point that I must highlight that Saju also mentioned in terms of your supply chain, right? So our herb suppliers are also very important to us, but we didn't go to the extent of actually looking at their infrastructure as well. Now, why is this important? Because sometimes it may not be our fault, right? We have done all that we can to safeguard ourselves and our business. But because the people that we are working with did not do the same, maybe a particular virus or Trojan was inserted into their package. What it may be an invoice, it may be a link that is sent you via email, right? And we click it and we become victims ourselves. So going through these essentials is so essential, right? Because you need to go and be aware of this kind of stuff. Yeah. So there are some common misconceptions that you all must know also. Okay. So only big companies or famous people are hacked. Okay, a lot of people talk about this, and the thing is like big companies. Okay, so the small guys, they not so interested. Actually, this is not true. Far from the truth, because the smaller you are, the more vulnerable you are. You have no idea about how easy is it. As in recent times, I just found out how easy is it for someone to hack you just by being on a public Wi-Fi, right? And even if you're on a Wi-Fi with a password, it's so easy for someone to just hack that password. And when I say easy, I mean they need to go and create a script with someone who knows coding, and then they go and brute force attack. So your passwords, why they tell you to have a long passphrase, 24 characters, 12 to 24 characters, and mix it up with special characters and numbers. There is a reason for that, so that if they have a script to run against this, it's going to take years and decades for them to actually crack your password. So these are really useful tools that you can consider doing, right? And famous people, I mean, how many of you actually know of friends or family who have their social media accounts hacked? Maybe you think that your friends or family, they are famous, but if let's say they are not so famous, why do they get hacked? Because there's incentive for these guys to do it, right? So this is a big misconception. Next one is government will protect me. Okay, yes, the government will protect us, but we need to protect ourselves as well. We need to do our part to go out there and really defend ourselves and the people that we love. And even if you think that, hey, I'm too smart for this, it won't be me. Sure, but what about the more vulnerable members in your family and your friends, right? If they get scammed, are you going to be like, haha, you get scammed, you see Hawkeye, then, or are you really going to go and, like, if it's your own family member, you will definitely go and reach out to them and see if you can help financially, right? So it also affects you. So you also need to go and tell them, right? The third thing is the bank will reimburse me. So yeah, okay, so maybe people will be thinking like, oh, because OCBC, they reimburse the guy, so yeah, if this one happened, they will also reimburse me. Not true. They're not obligated to do so. Actually, it was out of pure goodwill. In fact, I think they're also discussing some loss sharing mechanism. So do not take it for granted. Okay, and fourth thing, no one can figure out my password, which I just mentioned just now. Highly untrue. They can run a script and they don't even need to, because nowadays, as much as we like to work from home, all these hackers and all these scammers, they also want to work from home. Yeah, they don't want to do, and work from home also, they want to find a robot that is working for them. Yeah, so they go and learn all these things and use it for nefarious reasons. Yeah, so we need to be mindful of this. And lastly, a lot of people think that, hey, I already got an antivirus software, so I'm well protected. Okay, if you think like this, okay, let me show you. So after my certification, right, so I got certified sometime earlier this year, Cyber Essentials. And look at this, this was just 10 days ago. 10 days ago, I received in my professional email, this seemingly from Google. Now, you can look at your phones or your screens and you can see if you receive this, what will you do? Will you basically telling you that, okay, some person from Russia is trying to access and Google okay, has prevented this hijacker. So will you click that this is me, this wasn't me, or would you do something else? Okay, for those of you who click, who think that you click that no, this wasn't me, okay, nah, wrong. You just got downloaded a virus. Okay. Smart thing to do, see who is the sender. Okay, this at google-security.net definitely is going to be something like dubious. If you don't know, just Google the thing. Okay, and I'm sure Saju can go deeper into this because, yeah, what I did was I hovered my mouse over the no, this wasn't me, and I saw the link. It was incongruent with Google. So it was some long link over there, and that seems highly suspicious to me. So this is real. So even though I went through the cyber essentials, even though I had like a strong antivirus software, this is still possible to come in. And if I was careless, yeah, things would have leaked. So the threat is real. Okay, now the timeline and costs. It took me 2.5 months with less than $1,000 on the certification fees. And also because I understand that there's a early bird discount. So highly recommend you guys take advantage of that. Okay. And that brings me to the end. Please give your feedback for today's session. And I think we can go into the Q&A.
Hello, thank you, Veronica, Daniel, and Saju also for this sharing. I think we have one question from Len on the SME Center Safe. I'm trying to read and understand the question. Okay, meanwhile, we have another question. Yeah, it's about, how we can prevent scammers and hackers, from getting the data and harming the people we love. I guess I'll try to answer from a Smart Nation perspective. I think that everyone here who came for this webinar, I think that's firstly a good start, because one thing about scams is that they are getting obviously very inventive and very ingenious. Even what Daniel showed, right, the Google scam, I mean, to me personally, it looks quite convincing to me. But of course, when you drill down into the details, like the link and also the sender's email, then that's when you realize, oh, something is not right? So I think that firstly, like what Daniel has mentioned, we have to play our role in being a bit more vigilant and also making a point to stay informed about the latest trends that the scammers are trying to pick up, that the scammers are using to scam us. But the second one is we also have to make sure that we have the necessary technological safeguards in place. And that is something that we can look into with this Cyber Essentials and Cyber Trust Mark certification scheme. I think for us, that is where the government, we are also trying to step in to develop apps such as Scam Shield to at least as a first pass try to let users, report some of these suspicious numbers so that we can already filter out some of these calls and messages. So that is the response from my perspective. Maybe our esteemed speakers can also contribute more. Yeah.
Like Daniel was mentioning about the Google scam issue, how cyber essential marks will help organization is we cannot prevent this kind of emails coming, still can come. Like Daniel was rightly pointed out, you have all the very sophisticated system, antivirus, malware, firewall, all these things in place, but still can come in through email. But what we can prevent is train the people, let them know that these things happening. Like what Daniel did, we just go through the hyperlink, understand, oh, there is something is very not right. So they should know, they should act on it. So these are the things under the section A1, the training of people, the assets. The people are the assets. We have to train them, we have to educate them. The training is not a one-off thing, it's a continual training. We have to be continually keep training them. After getting the Cyber Essential Mark certification, the training shouldn't be stopping there. It should be continually going on. So the training awareness should happen, keep on going on, so that the employees are aware of this kind of emails. They will not go and click the link. They will not download any malwares into the computers and spread it to the network. That's the things we can do, prevent. It's slow and steady. We cannot be like someone asking, there is no way, there is nothing is secure in this world. So how the nation is going for, government is going for a smart nation, we are the assets for them. So the people, each one of us, play our part so that we can protect people. Not today or not tomorrow, don't know when.
I guess chipping in, maybe I would also like to add that I think for all of us as humans, we always tend to be sometimes the weakest link, but we can also turn that into being the first line of defense. And I think if you look at the patterns of attacks, it can be evolving quite rapidly. But let us not forget that usually they prey on a few human traits. One is sometimes a certain trust in authority. So when you do see emails from what you think are authoritative figures, commonly spoof ones like governments, please try to think twice and double check and verify a little bit more. Number two is that sometimes they also like to prey on a sense of urgency, create a certain kanjongness, like, oh, you see an offer, don't miss it, it's going to close soon. Please, I think, also try to develop that instinct to ask yourself, is this too good to be true? So I think over time, as we practice this, and Sajid rightly said that training is one thing, but you cannot just stop at training. But if you keep practicing this as part of your daily life, hopefully this also becomes an instinct so that you don't need to literally expect it in training, but it's actually part and parcel of your natural reaction. I think this would be quite useful in helping us to remember some of the things that we need to do in order to be vigilant and aware about the common attacks that would actually cause us to fall.